mold in your home and you're wondering what should you do? Hello, my successful and healthy earthlings. ᴄᴜʀʀᴇᴛᴟ here, naturopath and founder of the Natural Health Podcast. In this episode today, I'm going to talk to you step-by-step process on what you can do if there is mold in your home. And at the end of this episode, I'm going to give you an opportunity to join a health and success oriented community by clicking below and join the Natural Health newsletter. Welcome to the Natural Health Podcast, where we bring awareness to sustainable health in a business hustle space. Natural Health Podcast is perfect for the high-performing, business-minded individuals who want to work with their biochemistry to achieve optimal health and success. It's Wednesday, which means it's time for What Would I Do? In today's episode of Natural Health Podcast, we discuss this week's question or questions. I'll keep confidential and I read and answer them as it falls me. Hence why it's called What Would I Do? The information provided must be taken as advice and it's all information purposes only. I'm not here to cure, treat, or provide medical advice. I'm here to educate and inform you so you will take steps towards optimal health. Please discuss any medical issues with your healthcare professional. Let's get into today's question. Today's question is a very interesting one, and it is: I'm currently living in a rental property and there is mold in my bedroom. Is there anything I can do to assist me with detoxifying the mold? Thank you so much for writing in, because we know here in Australia, mold is a huge issue, especially if we're living up north. So Queensland and the hot spaces, right? So you're asking a great question of what you can do if you are exposed to mold in rental properties. And we know that when we do live in rental properties, we don't have much control about a house, about what's happening around us compared to if we own the place, right? But what you can do, let's first look into mold. Why should you even be concerned, or why mold may even be an issue, right? So mold is actually a type of fungus grown in on moist food and other surfaces. So it grows on food also and on surfaces. While generally thought to be an outdoor problem, mold contaminations building is quite common, and it is a huge issue, causing a number of health issues. In fact, of air pollutions have been received increasing attention both clinically and in the media. Mold has been, hit the media with a number of individuals having issues with their life, with their health due to mold. So there was a study from Harvard University, and it did 13,369 white children aged 8 to 12 from 24 communities across North America, reported that the prevalence of indoor mold growth was between 22 to 57, affecting 450% of households in 5 communities. So essentially what this is saying is, in America, there is a lot of places indoors that have a mold. I'm sure in Australia, it is exactly the same issue. I don't have the statistics here in Australia, but if you've ever gone to an inspection, a rental inspection or a house inspection, if the house is more than 30, 40 years old, you look into the bathrooms, you look at the walls, you look outside and you're like, oh, there's mold. Or you walk in and you go, oh, that smell, I don't like that smell. That smells like mold, right? So there are issues with it. And some people, unfortunately, live with it in the whole house because they can't afford something or because they're controlled by their landlord, right? So let's look into what actually, I know I should do a whole big episode on mold, and I've actually interviewed an absolutely amazing individual that spoke about mold on the Natural Health Podcast. Check out Friday's episodes. But let's look at what happens when mold enters your body. So fungal growth occurs in the form of filaments known as hypothia and spores, right? So spores, mold spores, we heard about that. The growth of mold is omnipresent, not only in outdoor settings, but also in indoor environments. So it's not just outdoors, it's indoors too. It's not just on food, but it's also on buildings, right? So that has excessive moisture. Modern day buildings practice have exacerbated the problem. So the way that the houses are built these days have actually made the issue even worse. So energy efficient homes with little airflow is not how nature intended for us to have. So I guess the more energy efficient your home is, the more there might be an issue, okay? Some molds especially, and I'm not going to bother pronouncing them because I have no idea how to pronounce these names. Something T, something F, and something S. They produce mycotoxins that are absorbed from the skin, so through our skin, through our airways, and into an intestinal lining. Intestinal lining everywhere, right? Mycotoxins are secondary metabolites that are volatile organic compounds and damage your DNA. They damage your DNA. If something damages your DNA, do you want to be exposed to it? I know I don't, right? People exposed to mold and mycotoxins present with symptoms affecting multiple organs, not just the lungs, not just our muscles and our nervous system, but also our muscles, our musculoskeletal system, our reproductive system, our central, our peripheral nervous system, so many aspects of our whole body and our systems, right? Now that you know a little bit of mold, and I'm going to go into detail more probably in another episode, but what questions can you ask yourself? Okay, so you're living in a rental property and you have mold in your bedroom. How long have you been exposed to this mold? How long has this exposure been around for? Have you been only exposed for a few days, for a few weeks, for a month, for years? How long has this exposure been? What is your current health like? Are you currently experiencing any symptoms? Sniffles, memory loss, nervous systems, mood disorders, reproduction issues? What are you showing up at the moment? Are you currently having any symptoms? Do you have any bowel issues? Are you sweating? So many things, like what is happening in your body at the moment. And do you feel a difference if you go somewhere, like stay at your parents, at your partners, go and stay at maybe an Airbnb or a hotel? Are there any difference? Is there a difference between your signs and symptoms? So you might get more sniffly when you're at home, or you might get more depressed when you're at home compared to when you're out somewhere, right? I know there's a number of changes that occur also, but try and figure out what's happening. What is happening? Are there any changes? Okay. So once you figure that out, what is your plan? So what has your real estate agent said? What has your landlord said? Are they fixing the issue? Have they just left it? Have they just ignored you? How long do you have left on your rental property? Can you go live somewhere else for the meantime? What can you do? That is the question. What can you do in the meantime? Because as I've expressed to you only in 5 minutes, and I could talk 5 days about it, is mold is dangerous for you if you're exposed to it, especially if you're sleeping in a room filled with mold. That is a no-go. You cannot sleep in a room full of mold unless you want health issues, which, I mean, no one really does, right? So what I will do is get out of the exposure. Number one is remove yourself from the exposure. Okay, so the room has mold. You remove yourself from that room. Okay, that room door needs to be closed. That room needs to be needs to put a tape around it. Do not access, danger, like police space, right? So get out of there. Then work with a health professional to kill and remove the mold, the mycotoxins, and sweat it all out of your body. Because okay, there might be something help you. Why maybe let's say your plan is to move there out of a week. Okay, cool. Maybe you might start the process and then you need to continue the process of detoxifying. You need to detoxify because you have been exposed to it. May not be having many issues now, depending on your type of person that you are, but you may have issues in the future and you don't want to give that probability, right? So remove yourself from the situation, live at a mate's, live at a parent's, finally move in with your partner. Do what you got to do to ensure that you've removed yourself from this exposure. Get onto the landlord so you can send them articles on how bad mold is for health. And I know in some states, some countries, depending where you are, you may get reimbursed if you are staying at a hotel while they're fixing things at the home. So you can also test for your mycotoxin exposure. You can do that while working with a health professional. But number one thing is get out of there. I would get out of there. Then I would find a really good health professional that knows about mold and tests me and gets me to go on a whole detox and then retest me again to see if my symptoms are getting better. So that is what I would do if I was exposed to mold. I hope that I shed some light to your question. I know it's not an easy thing to do to just leave, get up and leave and go. But this is where you need support and community around you. But I'm just saying how it is, right? I want you to live an optimal, healthy life. And if I want you to live an optimal, healthy life, that means getting out of there. All right. So if you know someone who would absolutely love this episode, share it with them. Do what you do best. Love, like, share Natural Podcast. Remember to hit the bell notification button, subscribe to the Natural Podcast so you are informed when amazing episodes like this come out. And remember to join Natural Podcast. Everyone's raving about it, how good the podcast, how good the natural health newsletter is, because every Friday they're like, wow, in my inbox, bonuses, specials that I wouldn't have had access to if I wasn't subscribed. Thank you for joining us on Natural Health Podcast. Remember, the missing link between failure and success is your health. Content and information provided here is opinion of ᴄᴜʀᴇ and is for information purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. It is not intended to provide medical advice or take the place of medical advice or any current treatment you're undertaking. Consult your own medical professionals for any medical issues that you may be having. This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to the Natural Health Podcast. It is advised that you consult your doctor or healthcare professional in relation to any health concerns you may be having. ᴄᴜʀᴇ does not take responsibility for any health consequences which occur from a person listening, viewing, or reading this content. Under no circumstances shall the Natural Health Podcast, ᴄᴜʀᴇ, any guests or contributors to the Natural Health Podcast, or any employees, associates, or affiliates of ᴄᴜʀᴇ be responsible for damages arising from the information provided on the Natural Health Podcast. By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast as medical advice to treat any medical conditions in either yourself or others. Please note, if you're taking prescription, do not stop your medication or start a new protocol, including but not limited to supplements, diet, lifestyle changes without consulting a doctor or healthcare professional. If you or any person has a medical concern, you should consult with your healthcare provider or seek other professional medical advice. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something that you have read or heard on the Natural Health Podcast or in any linked materials. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. Neither ᴄᴜʀᴇ nor the publisher of this content takes responsibility for the possible health consequences of any person or persons reading or listening or following the information in the educational content.